Hello there, this is Ragnon, and this is my Holy Priest Mythic Plus guide for 10.1.7. First of all, if you enjoy this video and you're looking for more healer content, consider liking and subscribing. It helps me out a lot. I am producing healer content, especially for Holy and Disc Priest, and you can also catch me live on my Twitch stream, twitch.tv/Ragnon Gaming, where I stream our Mythic Raids on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday from 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. Mountain Time. Let's dive right in. First of all, why would you want to play Priest compared to the other healers? Well, there's in keys, especially high keys, Fort is a very strong buff. It's one of the reasons that Shadow Priests are so popular, in addition to very strong tools like Mass Dispel, Soothe, allowing some skips that are otherwise impossible, even with Invisibility and Shroud and stuff. Also, you have a very easy time with affixes. You can solo Afflicted, you can solo Incorporeal. You can also have a really easy time with Entangling. Bursting with Mass Dispel is extremely strong, and so it's one of the big reasons why Priests are a must-have on Bursting weeks. But why Holy specifically? I've really enjoyed Holy. It's feels strong, especially since I'm more of a pug healer. I very rarely play with coordinated groups, and so what I've enjoyed with Holy is it has very strong spot heal potential for groups that may be standing in avoidable mechanics and have some unpredictable damage that you might otherwise have a hard time responding to. Holy deals very well with that. It also has a very straightforward play style. I really enjoy the Holy Word mechanic, which we'll talk more about in just a minute when we get to the playstyle and rotation. It does have a very high damage ceiling, so although Disc has passive damage that's always going to be there, when you can take the time to deal damage as Holy, you can pump out some pretty impressive numbers, and we'll go over how to do that. Also, I enjoy that it's not really cooldown reliant. Your big cooldown is Apotheosis, and honestly, I've had some keys where I've totally forgotten to use it. That's becoming less and less as I start pushing higher keys, but you can have quite good throughput even without cooldown, so you are not really cooldown reliant, which feels pretty great. Also, you bring PI. PI is another reason why Priest in general is strong, and so that's another force multiplier for your group. The stats. In Mythic Plus, it's quite different than Raid. In Mythic Plus, Haste is going to be your #1 stat because the faster that you can respond to damage, the better. Holy is pretty global starved. You have to spend globals either healing or dealing damage, so the faster that you can swap between those and respond to damage, the better CDR you can get on your Holy Words, and Haste just makes it all work. So Haste is going to be by far your best stat for Mythic Plus. And then after that, I like to prioritize Versatility. Versatility is going to help you survive. Holy Priest is pretty squishy, and Versatility really helps a lot once you start pushing into higher and higher keys, and it also helps out your damage. Crit can also be good. The reason that I value it less than Versatility is just because it doesn't help you survive, which is a big issue. But crit is very good for getting very strong heals and also helping out your damage quite a bit. And lastly, Mastery is not going to be a priority at all. You may have some Mastery from your raid sets or whatever, and so whatever you have is fine, especially in lower keys, but it does not provide any extra damage at all, so that's why we prioritize it the least. For gear, obviously you want to have your tier set. Your tier set is very strong, even in Mythic Plus. The 2 set is when you cast your Prayer of Mending, there's a 35% chance that it's duplicated to another ally. So I've had times where I've started casting Prayer of Mending, and I've had Prayer of Mending even within 2 or 3 casts. I've had it on the entire party, which is very, very strong. We'll talk more about why Prayer of Mending is such an incredible spell later. And then the Force set, whenever it jumps or expires, it increases the damage of your next holy word by 4%, stacking up to 15 times. So as your Prayer of Mendings bounce around and stuff, when it comes time to use a holy word, it's going to hit like a truck. So you don't really have to think extra about maximizing this. It kind of just happens. So if you use your holy words when there's healing that needs to be done, chances are it's going to hit much stronger because of all the Prayer of Mending bounces. And then trinkets, obviously Rashax is number one. It is extremely strong. It has a lot of healing that it will provide. It gives you a ton of mana, so Rashax is a must-have. Even if it's LFR difficulty, get your hands on a Rashax if at all possible. And then the secondary trinket is actually pretty flexible. You can fit in a lot of different choices for this. I run the OCD with crit. You could also run it with haste. I just keep it on crit because that's what I have it for my raid set, and I don't like flying back and forth every time I need to do a dungeon, so I just keep it on crit. And then other choices are the Black Dragon Scale, which I don't have, the Screaming Black Dragon Scale from Kazara. That's a very strong choice. It'll give you a lot of extra crit. And another choice would be the Beacon to the Beyond. I run this especially in Brackenhide to help with the totems. It will provide a lot of your damage, and so it's a very strong choice if you're wanting to focus on damage. The only problem is it gives mastery as its stat, so that's not great, but it's worth it for the damage if that's what you're looking for, especially in, like, you know, vault keys and stuff when you're just messing around and you want to see how high of you can get on the damage meter. Beacon is going to be your best choice. And then finally, a niche choice is the Ward of Faceless Ire. This is from Echo of Neltharion, the second to last boss in the raid. This can be a very strong choice for an extra external. This is almost like a second GS. And so you can use this on a target. Let's say that the whole group is taking damage. You can GS one person and throw a ward on a second person. You know, you don't even have to touch those two people really at all. The GS will benefit from, you know, your Prayer of Mending bounces and your passive heals and stuff. And then the ward target's going to have a shield that's, you know, like 2/3 of their full health. It's really strong. So those are the trinkets I would recommend. Rashok, obviously, again, is top priority, and then there's lots of choices for the second trinket. Let's go ahead and start talking about the talent tree. So the talent tree, there's actually a lot of flexibility and personal expression in the talent tree, which I really like. We'll look at the class tree first. This is generally what I run in my class tree. Holy does, in my Holy set, I do run Phantasm in all my builds, I believe, and that helps to clear your snare effects. This is really nice. And for example, the last boss of Uldaman, when the slow goes out on a bunch of people, you can mass dispel, and you can get yourself out as well very easily if everybody's all spread out and stuff. So that's really nice. I do choose to bring Angelic Bulwark. You could choose to not do that. It's just an extra little defensive, but I do see a lot of builds that go instead down this way into Improved Fade and Essence Devour. It's a personal preference. It's up to you. And then on Incorporeal weeks, you definitely want to make sure that you have... I bring Dominate Mind regardless because I find a lot of uses for it. But you do also want to make sure that you bring Shackle Undead. So I would drop a point in... you could drop a point in Improved Mass Dispel to pick up Shackle Undead. You could drop... let's see here. You could drop Angelic Bulwark. That's not really a big issue to drop to get Shackle Undead. But that's an important pickup for Incorporeal weeks because you can solo it by casting Shackle Undead on one Incorporeal and Dominate Mind on the other. And you can do that every single time, and it's very, very strong. And then the class, or the spec tree, let's talk about this. So there's two big builds. One is the Lightweaver build, and one is the Miracle Worker build. I'm going to go over the Miracle Worker build first because this has just been night and day better for me. I've fallen in love with Miracle Worker compared to Lightweaver, and it's really been a breath of fresh air for me in Mythic Plus. So this is actually a very similar build to what you might run in Raid. Going down this side, going down answered prayers. It looks actually fairly similar outside of going to this side. This section right here looks very similar to a Raid build. So you do get answered prayers, which makes it so that when your Prayer of Mending bounces and it heals 50 times, you're going to get Apotheosis. I have a WeakAura that I'm going to go over in just a minute that will show how close you are to this, and it will make a sound effect. And it's very helpful to get some extra CDRs on your holy words when you're being intentional about spending during your procs of Apotheosis. Miracle Worker gives 2 charges of your holy words, Serenity and Sanctify, and those are your big heavy hitters for healing. Those are kind of your go-to, and everything else that you do is really to provide CDR to build up to that. With this build especially, just spamming Flash Heal is not very strong at all. And so this build really does take intentionality about knowing when there's going to be big damage, having Miracle Worker churning out the holy words so that they're ready to go when you need them. So it does take a little bit more intentionality. I find that it's probably better in higher keys where people are better at avoiding avoidable damage. If you are doing some lower keys, if you're just gearing your priest and stuff like that and everybody's standing and everything, the Lightweaver build might be a better choice for you, because the Lightweaver build has more constant healing potential, constant throughput, whereas this is slightly more cooldown reliant if you consider the holy words a cooldown. It does run Light of the Naru, which means that you have increased cooldown reduction on your holy words, and it does run Divine Image, which we'll go over the difference between Divine Image and Divine Word in my next section here. It does bring Divine Hymn. Divine Hymn is pretty weak. Honestly, it's not a great party cooldown for Mythic Plus, but I do find there are some really good uses for it. Really, I use Divine Hymn as a healing amp rather than the actual healing that it gives. A great example of this is the first boss of Brackenhide. What I like to do is I like to, as soon as we pull, I channel Divine Hymn, so that way the whole party has the stacks of the heal amp, and they're taking, I think it's like 20% extra healing, and that just really helps to top off the group pretty much instantly. And then that saves Apotheosis for the next time when you need some quick heals after you've been, mind controlled by the totem, and you need to be ready to catch the group up very quickly. So I use Divine Hymn for that. It's also kind of nice during like the third boss on Halls of Infusion. You can use this when you're hiding behind the pillar to get some heal amp on everybody and give you a little bit of breathing room to catch the group up. So this is the Miracle Worker build. Again, everything really focuses around building up your holy word charges and then spending them when you need to. Let's go over the Lightweaver build real quick. So the Lightweaver build is a little different. Instead of focusing on your holy words, it focuses more on heal and flash heal. So normally heal is a pretty terrible spell, like the actual spell name heal. But with this build, it buffs it up with Lightweaver. Lightweaver makes it so that your flash heal gives you a stack of this buff called Lightweaver, and it will make it so that your next heal is a faster cast time, and it also increases the healing done. And we've got some other talents like Everlasting Light that will increase your healing from heal. There's a lot of heals in these next couple sentences, but that's okay. So it makes your heal hit like a truck. So Lightweaver is going to be around flash healing and then casting heal afterwards. I find that like truly rotating between the two helps me to make sure that I'm not overcapping on Lightweaver. So I might open up with a flash heal and then go heal next, and then flash heal and heal after that. And then if we move to something else or we're doing something else, I always start with a flash heal. There are times where I overcap because I forgot that we already had a couple going, and it's not the end of the world, but ideally you want to never overcap on Lightweaver because that's just, it's a waste. So looking at more of Lightweaver. I have found that Lightweaver feels a bit more mana inefficient to me, and it's also much more stationary. So if you feel like you're just standing a lot and you have to be very stationary to chunk out your heals, that's normal. That was my experience too, and that's one of the reasons why I've had such a better time with the Miracle Worker build. It feels like I've freed up a ton of globals to be able to deal damage, and I'm not just stuck casting heal and flash heal. So it's an option. This version of the build does run Circle of Healing. Prayer of Healing, you never want to use that in Mythic Plus. It's not like Raid. Prayer of Healing is a very weak heal, and it's really just for the CDR, and it's not really worth it in Mythic Plus. So instead, you use it to path down to Circle of Healing, which is a decent heal that you can use on cooldown that will heal your group for a moderate amount and give you some nice passive CDR on your Sanctify. Let's go over the playstyle and rotation real quick. So I'll start with Miracle Worker. So I kind of talked a little bit about this in the build section, but your rotation for Miracle Worker is going to be looking at these Sanctify and Serenity charges, especially Serenity. So you want to be using Prayer of Mending on cooldown. Any moment this is up, this is your number one global. You want to make sure that you're Prayer of Mending on cooldown. It's a little different than in Raid. What I like to do is I like to look at the party and look for who has a high stack that is getting close to expiring. Your Prayer of Mending heals more based on the amount of charges. You can see right here, Divine Service, it heals 4% more for each bounce remaining. So the more stacks it has, it's going to heal for quite a bit more. So you want to preserve those high stacks as much as you can. Also, if you throw it on the tank, it's going to get a bounce very consistently because they're obviously taking constant damage. So if you're looking to build up your stacks of answered prayers, Prayer of Mending should go on the tank unless you have a stack that's looking like it's going to expire. Then if you have healing that needs to be done, if you have 2 charges of Serenity, you can go ahead and use a charge of Serenity. If multiple people are taking damage, then don't feel like you need to sit on these Sanctified charges. You can just throw that out as well. You'll notice that when I used a Holy Word, it brought out this Divine Image. The Divine Image will duplicate the heals that you do with a version of that spell from the Divine Word. So if you go to the Mechanical Priest, .com. I'll link it in the description. It has a full rundown on all the different abilities of the image and how that works with your words. But long story short, whenever you're doing a bunch of healing, you always want to start off with a Holy Word, whether that's Chastise, Sanctify, or Serenity. You want to get that image up and rolling so that any of your other heals that you do, it will provide extra healing. So always start off with a Holy Word when you can. And then if you don't have your Serenity available, then you want to be using your Prayer of Mending, which does provide CDR. I'll go ahead and cast it here. And so you can see here when I cast Prayer of Mending, it gives a good amount of CDR. I think it's like 5 seconds. And then your flash heals do as well. So if things are safe and you're not in any danger, I focus on using my second charge of Serenity, flash healing, Prayer of Mending, Sanctify, and stuff like that. And then when stuff really gets crazy, you can use your second charge of Serenity and Sanctify and stuff. And then I'm watching my answered prayers WeakAura like a hawk. And when I do get when it's about to proc, I might throw out some extra Holy Words just so I can build them back up. But when answered prayers procs and a free Apotheosis, I'm casting as many flash healings and Prayer of Mendings as I can to get that on cooldown. If I have 2 charges of that, if my Chastise is off cooldown and we're going to be going into a fight where I need some AoE healing, I might even spam some Renews. Renew is normally a terrible spell, but it is the only thing in our kit that actually gives CDR on Sanctify, unfortunately. So sometimes I'll actually use my answered prayers procs to do that. So that's really it for Miracle Worker, using your Holy Words. And then Lightweaver, we talked about it, the you're going to find you have a lot less regeneration on your serenities, so you want to save that. You don't have 2 charges with this build, so you want to save that for big moments where you need an immediate heal. The rest of your healing is all from Prayer of Mending on cooldown, Flash Healing, Heal, Circle of Healing, Divine Star is also really good. We'll go over that more in the damage section. I think of that more of it as a damage ability in Mythic Plus rather than a healing ability. And then when you need it, your holy words are your big emergency buttons, because you might have much less CDR on those than you do with the Miracle Worker build, because you're not getting those free Apotheosis procs. The benefit of this build is that you are going to find that you probably benefit more from your 4-piece because you're not spending those words. So when you do, it's going to hit very hard. So you need to make sure that you're using these wisely. Let's go over Apotheosis and Answered Prayers. We talked about Answered Prayers. Again, when that pops with your Miracle Worker build, you're looking to get as much CDR as possible. Apotheosis. So I talked at the beginning about how Holy is not really a cooldown reliant healer. Apotheosis is a strong healing cooldown, but again, your throughput is strong enough to really go without it. So there's a couple uses for Apotheosis. If there is a boss fight where you know there's going to be a big moment where you need healing, for example, Brackenhide, I talked about how the second Gash Frenzy or whatever, I use Apotheosis for that. I make sure that I have it ready for that. Other bosses where I want to make sure that I have it ready is what's his face in Nelthris, the one that has he jumps to people and makes the chains and stuff. Apotheosis is a strong cooldown to rotate for that. Forge Master Gorek, any moment where you know you need a big throughput window, Apotheosis is a strong cooldown for that. When you use it, you want to be very liberal with your holy words. Don't ever sit on 2 charges. Without Apotheosis, you can see it takes a lot of casting. I'm just going to do flash heals. You can see it takes a lot to get it back off cooldown. But with Apotheosis, it's like every 3 casts. So you see here, I'm going to use it. First of all, when I Apotheosis, it gives me a free charge, so you can use that to get a holy word back when you need it. Yeah, it took 2 flash heals to get a Serenity. So you can see I'm just going flash heal, Serenity, and it's the same thing with Palm. Palm, unfortunately, doesn't give you enough CDR. You'll still have to do 2 flash heals, but you can see you can fit in a ton of holy words with Apotheosis, so that's very good. If you're finding that you're keeping up with the healing fine, though, sometimes I honestly just use Apotheosis as an emergency holy word. So let's say that I've spent everything, I've got nothing left, and my tank just got hit by a huge amount. I just used my powered life on, an afflicted or something like that. I don't have anything for my tank. I might pop Apotheosis to immediately get back my holy word charges, so that I've got something to spend on him. And then after that, use the CDR to build up all my charges and get back up to 2 stacks. That's one of the ways that I use Apotheosis. And then again, using it on bosses. I forgot to talk about Powered Life. Powered Life is a very strong heal. When a target is below 35% health, it heals for 400% more of its normal value, and it almost feels like a lay on hands. It's extremely strong. It's a big hit. And the nice thing about Mythic Plus is you're not having your healing sniped by other healers like you might in Raid, and so you can get this pretty reliably to heal up 1 target to full. And if it's used successfully on somebody that's below 35% health, its cooldown is reduced from 30 seconds down to 10 seconds. So use this as much as possible. I have a WeakAura that I'll also include in the description that makes a chomp sound and highlights somebody's name yellow when they drop down below that threshold, so that I know I can get value out of it and I'm not having to guess. So Power Word Life. I do want to talk real quick about the difference between Divine Image and Divine Word. So Divine Image is the meta. It's strong. You're going to get good passive value out of it. You don't really have to think about it. It's just going to duplicate your healing and damage after you use a holy word. for the duration that it's up. Something that you do want to note, it's up for 9 seconds after you use a holy word. If you use another holy word, it's not going to double the duration or anything like that. Let's say that you got 9 seconds, you used a holy word, and then you use another holy word a second later. You're going to gain a second charge, or a second clone, I guess, of the abilities of that divine image, and it's going to add time at the end of it. So if you used a second word a second into that, then your divine image is going to last for a total of 10 seconds. 9 of which of that is going to get double effectiveness from your damage and healing spells. So what I find with divine image, you want to spread out your holy words, because you're going to get much better value from having a longer divine image than you are from having a stronger divine image, because if you don't happen to need to be casting healing, or you don't have any big damage cooldowns during that duration after you use that holy word, you're not going to get good value. So you don't have to think too much about it, but try to spread out your holy words so that you have better uptime on the divine image. I do want to talk about divine word real quick, because this is just something fun that I've been messing with. Divine word, you could run it with either Miracle Worker or with Lightweaver. It's probably honestly a little easier to use with Miracle Worker. I just don't have a build for this. So divine word makes it so that when you use one of your holy words, it gives you an extra buff for a few seconds, for 15 seconds, that's going to give you some additional effectiveness on things. So when you chastise, this is the big one I want to focus on. When you chastise, it increases all of your priest damage by 30%, and your smites have a 40% chance to apply Holy Fire. Holy Fire is very strong. We're going to go over that in our next section with damage stuff. And so what I've been messing around with in some vault level keys, and I haven't taken it into big keys yet because I'm scared, but I found that this pairs up really nicely with how bursty your damage windows are. You can use divine word and then chastise and chain your divine star, your holy nova stacks with rhapsody, your burning vehemence, holy fires and stuff like that. You can stack up a ton of damage in a very short window with that 30% damage amp. Or if you're doing on a boss, if you're fighting a boss and you don't need Apotheosis for healing, you can actually use Apotheosis for the increased CDR on your chastise, and you can just keep attacking the boss with smites and holy fires when it's up, and chastise like every 3 smites or so, and you can do a lot of single target damage with that. So that's something to mess around with. The other effects, if you use it with a Sanctify, it will put this thing on the ground that does a good amount of healing for people standing in it. You could use it, but in a 5-man environment, I think it's probably a better use to just, if you want to use it for healing, if you use it with a Serenity, it's going to make all of your heals, your flash heal, your heal, and your renew, which who cares about renew? It's going to heal for 30% more, have an additional 20% crit strike, and it costs less mana, costs 20% less mana. So this is one of the reasons why it's pretty strong with Lightweaver, is because your flash heal and your heal both benefit from that. So if you have a big healing moment, you can pop Divine Word, Serenity, and then from there on, you're just this throughput monster with your heals and flash heals. I've struggled with Divine Word because there's moments where I use it and then I chastise and I'm ready to do a ton of damage, and suddenly the group stands in something and they took a bunch of damage and I need to heal, and I'm not benefiting from the divine image, and I would have liked to have used it with a Serenity, and I don't have anything now. Or I use it and I forget I don't have a charge of Serenity ready, and I actually just use all my holy words. I don't have any holy words available. You do have to be intentional about making sure that you pair your Serenity with Divine Word if you want to use it for healing, because I've been caught a lot of times with my pants down, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's not as popular, is because Divine Image, you don't have to think about it. Let's talk about damage. So doing damage as a Holy Priest does take away your globals from being able to heal. So you have to be intentional about how you do your damage. The biggest ways that you're going to get damage with the least amount of globals is Holy Fire. Holy Fire makes it so that when you, it does 30% extra damage, and it does 60% of its initial impact damage to all enemies surrounding. So it turns it into an AoE spell, and a pretty strong one at that. So you can see right here when I cast it on this dummy, I'm going to deal, I did 300k damage right there, just with one hit, so with those 5 targets. So it's a very strong ability for, you know, something that's on such a short cooldown. So Holy Fire is very strong. Your Rhapsody has been buffed as of 10.1.5. Actually, I think it was after 10.1.5, but this Rhapsody change is so good. Every 1 second you get a stack of this buff that's going to make it so that your next Holy Nova does more damage and more healing. So I have a WeakAura here that when I get to 20 charges, I make sure that I'm in melee range, and it adds up to be about once or twice per pack in Mythic Plus, depending on how long the pull is. You can use this. So it'll take 20 seconds to stack up to maximum, and it will do a large amount of damage. It's not really worth it to go into melee and to just spam Holy Nova, because you're not building any stacks of that. You're not really getting much value, and also your globals are much better spent on doing other things than spamming your Holy Nova. So I would not recommend doing that. Another big damage ability is your Divine Star. This only takes 1 global. It'll shoot out this holy boomerang thing. It'll heal all of your allies in the path, and it'll damage all the enemies. And I found that that is a high damage ability for how, you know, how little time it takes to throw out. It's just 1 global, so it's very strong. And then when you have this is the big damage moment. When you have Burning Vehemence, or sorry, Imperial Blaze, excuse me. When you have Imperial Blaze, it makes it so that your next 3 casts, let me show it here. Your next 3 casts of Holy Fire don't cost any mana. They cast instantly, and they have no cooldown. And so this pairs with your Burning Vehemence, and that makes it so that your Holy Fires are just going to hit very, very strong, and you can cast a bunch of them in a short window. And it's good for AoE, it's good for single target. There's a couple different ways that you can use it. I like to target a priority mob. For example, the Enforcers at the beginning of Freehold, they have more health than everything else. They need some priority damage. This is great for that, and it's also going to do the AoE damage to everything else. If stuff is dying too fast for the dot component to last long enough to get its full duration, you can tab target around and cast it on individual targets, and it will do its AoE damage to everything. And as long as they live for 7 seconds, you're going to get full value out of the dot as well. So if there's no priority mob, sometimes I'll do that to make sure that I get the dot damage as well. So when I'm entering a pack, a lot of times I will get my Chastise on cooldown. I'll Holy Nova, Divine Star, use Imperial Blaze, and go ahead and cast my Holy Fires. Shadow Fiend when it's up, and then just start dealing damage. If it looks like things are going to survive for longer than the duration of Shadow Word Pain, which I'm forgetting, I think it's like 12 seconds, then I'll tab target and do Shadow Word Pains. But that is last priority after all of those things. It really doesn't do that much. Shadow Word Pain is just kind of an additional dot damage that you can throw on a single target. It's not worth tab targeting around when you've got all of those other things that you need to do first. So that's how I would do damage on a typical pack, prioritizing those spells. Defensives and survival. I talked about how Holy Priest is unfortunately quite squishy, and so to survive, there's a couple things that you have in your toolkit. One is Fade. Fade, because of this talent right here, Translucent Image, makes it so that it's a 10% DR on yourself when you use it, which 10%, whoop-de-doo, it's not a whole lot. But when you consider that Fade is only on a 30-second cooldown, that's a lot. That's a 33% constant uptime on a 10% DR. So you can use that a lot. When in doubt, Fade, and you should get good value out of it. That should be used as many times as you possibly can. Your only defensive is Desperate Prayer, and it stinks. Desperate Prayer is on a 1.5 minute cooldown. It increases your max health by 40% for 10 seconds and instantly heals you for that amount. It's kind of like a rallying cry just for yourself. And so you can see when I use it, I go from 565 up to 791k health. This is really just most useful when you're going to take a big hit of damage and you need to make sure that you just survive the initial hit so that you can heal yourself afterwards. It doesn't have any damage reduction component to it. I do have some macros that are pretty helpful that I'll share after this. So it's just really to help you survive the hit. I would use it liberally. It's better to get more uses out of it unless you know there's a moment where you're going to need it. You can optionally bring Angel's Mercy. Some builds bring that, and that makes it so that when you take damage, it gives you CDR on that Desperate Prayer, so you'll get it more frequently. I personally run Binding Heals because of this next thing I'm going to talk about. So 20% of your heal or flash heal heals you, so you're going to have a lot more passive healing on yourself. You don't have to worry about your health so much because you're going to be healed from that. But really the nice thing is right here, Protective Light. Casting Flash Heal on yourself reduces all damage that you take by 10% for 10 seconds. And you don't actually have to cast it on yourself. Like, check out this guy right here, this Orc Rogue. I'm going to cast, oh, he's apparently hostile to me. I'm going to cast, right here on this Orc Rogue, I cast Flash Heal, and you look, I get the benefit right here, Protective Light. So anytime you use Flash Heal on somebody else or yourself, you have a 10% DR, meaning that you have it pretty much 100% of the time. So that's pretty strong. I do have some macros that I'll share where I have Power Word Shield macroed in with my Desperate Prayer. So when I use my Desperate Prayer, it's going to do Desperate Prayer, Power Word Shield on myself, and Fade. So I have a good amount of health. I have a 42k absorption shield and then the DR from Fade. So I've found that works pretty well for myself. We're almost to the end of the video here. Just a couple things. Guardian Spirit is it's undervalued as a defensive. I love it though. It doesn't provide any damage reduction, unfortunately, but what it does allow you to do is it allows you to throw it on somebody and you can just ignore them. And so you know that while they have that up, they're not going to die, and they're going to be getting a ton of extra heals from your other passive stuff, your Prayer of Mendings, if they have a Renew on them or something like that. It increases all healing that they receive by 60%. And that's not just from you, that's from them as well, or anybody else that might be off healing. And then you can also throw it on a tank. It's good on just about any tank. Maybe not so much on Prot War, but most of the tanks have a great amount of self-healing right now, so throwing it on like a Blood Decay or a Vengeance Demon Hunter or something like that, they're going to take care of themselves. You don't even have to worry about it. And you bring a talent so that it only has a minute cooldown if it doesn't trigger the cheat death. So as much as possible, you don't want them to actually die. You just want them to benefit from the extra healing received, and then make sure that they don't actually fully lose health, because then it'll go on a 3-minute cooldown, unfortunately. But to get in the habit of using Guardian Spirit, I would just use it whenever you think about it. It's better to get more uses out of it than sit on it the whole dungeon and just use it a couple times. So I use it just about every pack. And when in doubt, just throw it on the tank and go back to dealing damage. So Guardian Spirit is a very strong ability. Don't forget about how you are probably squishier than most of the other people on your team. So a lot of times I like using this on myself. Like during a difficult tyrannical boss where everybody's taking tons of damage. Holy Priest is not like Disc Priest where you've got Radiance and you can just top up everybody right away and then do your atonement healing. You kind of need to cycle through everybody, especially with a Lightweaver build. You got to kind of work your way through the group, and it takes a while to top everybody up. So Guardian Spirit makes it so that you don't have to worry about yourself, and you can benefit from the healing received from Binding Heals and stuff like that. just to finish off the video here, I have quite a few macros, WeakAuras, keybinds that I will share in a spreadsheet. I have a spreadsheet with all of my keybinds. If you're curious about how I keybind stuff, any WeakAuras that I use, I will provide links in that spreadsheet to wago.io where you can import them yourself, and then any macros that I might use as well. So I just want to highlight a few. So the first one is my answered prayers and apotheosis tracker. I love this thing. I have it actually tracked on 2 places. So on my actual WeakAura pack that's here by Atrocity, it shows my stacks. I don't really even look at that, honestly. I look at this one right here. So this answered prayers, it has a bar that fills up, and once I get to 45 out of the 50 stacks to proc it, it makes it, I added a sound effect, so it goes, oh, it makes like a chant sound. And that way I know I need to pay attention so that as soon as it finishes to its 50 stacks, I can start spamming heals to get my cooldown reduction. So I love that WeakAura, that's a good one. Another great one is Dibs on Power Infusion. So this is a great quality of life one where anytime somebody in your party uses a big cooldown that benefits from PI, it'll highlight their name in yellow and it'll say in your ears, it'll say empowered. And that way you know you can cast PI on them. It also works so that if you set them as your focus, it will tell them, it'll specifically focus on that one person and tell you just when their cooldowns are ready to go. I like that in Raid as well. I use that honestly for my PI assignment in Raid, and it works wonders. It's great. And then I use a macro to cast it on my my focus. Divine Image Tracker, I like this one because it helps me make sure that I actually have a divine image up. Again, it's not going to do any healing unless you've used a holy word to actually summon it before you start doing all your other heals. So I like looking at it and seeing if it's about to expire, then I know I can freely use another holy word. If I look over and it's got like 8 seconds on it, then I know it's probably not a good time to use a holy word, and I'll just wait for a little bit until it goes away. A little bit of optimization that you can do. Rhapsody Stack Tracker. So this is a really simple one. It just shows you the amount of stacks of Rhapsody that you have, and when you hit 20, I think it starts showing around 15 stacks, but it just helps you get more uses out of your Rhapsody. So I like that one a lot. Some other ones, there's one more, I think, at least. Where is the... trying to find the healing one. I'm having a hard time finding it, but there's also one for your power word life that shows you when you when somebody's below that 35% extra health. Oh yeah, I got worked into my my priest set right here. It is right somewhere, but anyways, right here, power word life. So this one shows it'll make a chomp sound effect when somebody goes below that 35% health, and it'll highlight them with a yellow border, and that way you know that you can get good value out of your power word life. So those are some great WeakAuras. I hope you found this helpful. Again, we went a little long with the video, but I feel that everything that we know over is important for you to know in order to be successful with playing Holy Priest at hopefully a higher Mythic Plus level. I've had a really easy time with this build, anywhere from 20s up to 25s, and I'm planning to push even higher over the next couple weeks. So again, if you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing, and it helps me out a lot. Also, feel free to check me out on my Twitch, which you can find linked in the description, twitch.tv/Ragnon Gaming. I stream our Mythic raids. I raid at a cutting edge level, and we raid Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I will also be streaming Mythic Plus on off nights occasionally, as well as some of my other games like Phasmophobia and 7 Days to Die and some other stuff. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely time with Holy Priest, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.